What are you doing? You're live.
Hello and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in the property market. Property Matters is supported by Fairview International Property Consultancy and Town & Country Property Auctions London. So we love it, as you know, when you get involved in the show. And what we'd like you to do, of course, is to comment on our programme, beneath the programme, wherever you're watching the video today. And of course, don't forget to like our page and subscribe to the channel so you automatically get all the reminders when the show goes live. You can email us at any time with feedback or questions. Topics for discussion, of course, will be welcome from you if you have any. And we'd like you to do that via propertymatterstv@gmail.com. So joining us as always with a little technical challenge there is Joe Joshi. Joe, good morning. Joe, can you hear me okay? I've got Joe on the screen. Let's see if I can get Joe up on the screen. Joe, can you hear me? Joe is not. It's going to be one of those mornings. Joe, can you hear me? Bob, morning. Joe, if you log in again for me, that would be great. Bob, morning.
Good morning.
I'm not sure what happened there. We were trying to do some rather clever technical things there in screen sharing, weren't we?
Doesn't always work, does it?
In the end, it's completely messed us up, but that'll teach me to be brave and try to do something technical just before we're starting.
The gremlins are back.
Joe should log back in very shortly. Here he is now, in fact. So let's just see if we can get Joe on the screen. Joe is there. It's saying he's in the green room. And so if I remove him from the green room, he is there, but he's not able to hear us for some reason. Joe is... I don't know what's happened there. Can you hear us, Joe? You can. Should we do this by sign language this week? Excuse me. Okay. Okay. Let's just see if I can do you like this, Joe. 1 second. So we can see if we can get this sorted.
Should I log back out and come back in, or am I okay?
You're okay. I've got you absolutely fine, Bob, which is great.
Right, okay.
So I can see Joe, but why I can't? He can't hear us, or he can hear us, but we can't hear him, of course.
Okay. Well, that's not nothing.
Okay, let's just see if we can get Joe. Give it one more try, if you could, by logging in again, if you would. And so what we'll do is, while I'm trying to sort that, Bob, we'll move on to our first story, and we're very much delighted to have you with us this week and talking about mortgages, obviously. And
Thank you.
The market is in a very interesting position right now because basically the market's saying this week that there is. This is the best time to remortgage or to look to get in, because mortgage rates for borrowers with a 40% deposit fell to the lowest point ever in June, according to the Bank of England. The cost of an average 2-year fix with a 60% loan to value was 1.15% last month, which has been driven down by a host of sub 1% deals released to the market in June. But borrowers are being warned by the experts not to hang around because the swap rates are starting to move higher. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, there's a lot of competition now in the mortgage market, especially the 2-year scene. Many lenders are now coming in at sub 1%, which is unheard of. So it's, as you say, it's a very, very good time to remortgage, a very good time to buy, and particularly if you can maybe look at longer term rates, because swap rates, yes, they're increasing. But let's see what happens. I don't think the rates will run away. I don't think we're going to see any major movements for the next 2 years. And there's reasons behind that. We, as a country, as an economy, very much follow what happens in the USA. Now they're also facing inflationary fears, but over there, their government has invested $2 trillion and bought housing debt. So they've bought $2 trillion worth of mortgages. So, they are now have a vested interest in rates staying low. So I think whilst the markets may drive rates up slowly, I think there'll be a resistance because obviously governments will have to pay more for their own debt if they like, for their own investment. So, even 5-year rates are not too much higher than the 2-year market. I've just done one last week where a 5-year rate was 1.24%. So, for a 0.25% more, you can buy yourself 5 years worth of security. So we as a company tend to do 5-year products rather than 2-year because I think they're a lot safer. But stats tell us that August is now a time when lots and lots of mortgages that were done 5 years ago are coming up for maturity. So now really could be an opportunity of a lifetime to lock yourself in for another 5 years at historically low rates.
Indeed.
So I think it's a fantastic time.
Okay. I'm just a quick word to Joe. Joe, I was just wondering whether actually you go and use your desk location and see if we can get you in from there. If you're able, I can't hear you obviously, but just wondering whether if that would make a difference if you used a different location. Because I can't. I've got you. Yeah, speak to you later. Okay. Yeah, because obviously it was the headline grabbing rates, wasn't it? 0.99% 2-year fix for HSBC and a 0.94 for TSB, which meant that this was the lowest ever rates that mortgage borrowers were having with that 40% deposit. And it meant that a repayment would be £959 a month on a 250k mortgage. And there's good news in the loan-to-value tiers for the 90s and 95%, which has fallen to a 12-month low as well, according to the report.
Absolutely, yeah. 95% rates are now sub 4%, where they were just edging above. And the 90% market has also dipped as well. So, as I've said, it's a very good time to borrow. It's a very good time to buy because rates are, it's higher than what we'd like to see, obviously, because pre-pandemic, the 90% schemes were in the twos, mid twos. Now they're obviously edging towards 3, which reflects the current state of the economy, etc. But still, quite affordable. Not too bad, I think, compared to other nations.
Yeah. So we're seeing that rates are definitely cheaper now than they were in 2019, but we're still haven't quite got to the lows of mid 2020, have we?
Not yet. No, I think that'll take some time. If we enjoy a good economy as we come out of lockdown, then things will hopefully be stable. There's a lot of unknowns yet to come around the corner. The ending of the furlough scheme, how people now react having been given the freedom. Will they splash their cash or hoard it and not spend it at all? So a few unknowns yet to be ascertained before we really know where we're going.
And the 2-year swap rates of, as you say, are starting to increase. And of course, because mortgage lenders hedge their loans, they're obviously going to be locking in a higher cost of funds compared to a few months ago. So that's inevitably going to be inflationary on rates.
It would be, yeah. The swap rates play a big part in short and long-term rates. So, they're a good indicator as to which way the banks will go long-term. But swap rates do fluctuate. So, this week they might be showing a bit of an increase, and next week they might be showing a bit of a decrease. So it's, we have to see the trends, if you like, not short-term ups and downs. As with the housing market, we need to look at trends rather than weekly or monthly figures.
And it's interesting. There's a lot of talk about credit risk in this week's show, and there seems to be a lot of news around credit risk. And they're saying that on the higher loan to value, so the 95s and the 90%, that the rate is being driven as much by the risk of the individuals as it is about the swap rate.
It is, yeah, because we are living through unprecedented times. Yeah, we have no idea if the Delta variant will have another impact on the economy. Will we see another lockdown? Will we see more job losses? And will the furlough scheme be extended or even reintroduced later? So whilst we're going through this, I think lenders will be a little bit cautious in terms of lending. They'll be very, very particular in as to how much they lend, how they price their products, which sectors they look out for. Travel, hospitality, etc. Those sort of borrowers do tend to get a bit of a hard time, particularly if you're self-employed in those sectors. So I think lenders are doing the right thing. They're pricing according to risk, which is the way it should be. And that's what led to the disaster of 10, 12 years ago, because lenders didn't price for risk. They gave self-certificated loans willy-nilly, no income checks, and look what happened. So I think they're doing the right thing.
If we just look at buy-to-let for a moment, landlords now have 2,709 mortgage products to choose from, which is more than was on the market before the pandemic took hold. And a landlord wanting a 5-year fix can typically get one for around 3.01%, far cheaper than the 3.5% of 2019. So, is this a good time to look at it?
It is, yeah. The 3% is a limited company loan, not a personal loan. If you're buying in your own name, 5-year rates are just over 2%, 2.1, 2.2. So, if you're not a high rate taxpayer, and if the gross rental income from your buy-to-let investments doesn't tip you over the edge, £50,000 income per year, then you can get rates at 2.1, 2.2. You don't, unless you particularly are advised to buy through a limited company, yes, then the rates are 3.1, 3.2, thereabouts.
I do believe we have Joe with us.
Hey,
well, you're back. Well done.
Are you at your different location now?
I've just moved to Paris.
Don't blame you. It's great to have you back, Joe. That's great.
I'm glad you didn't say it wrong.
My fan base was messaging me and telling me, we can't hear you. I think actually they were probably thinking, like Bob said, I heard him. I didn't miss that one. He goes, it's a good job he's quiet. So, yeah. It felt like that program, it'll be all right on the night, when it isn't, and it's all going wrong in the back end.
Yeah. Well, what we were trying to do, you see, we were trying to get the screen to be able to share from Bob's laptop, and so that we could share some latest rates. And foolishly, I gave it, and this is the first thing you should never do when you're on a live broadcast, is to try and change things at the last minute. And I should know that by now after all these years. But nonetheless, I thought I'll try and help Bob out. So I built this screen very quickly to put up there, and then tried to get Bob to connect to it. And then that's when I lost you instead. And how that happened, I'll never know. But the great thing is you're back now. So apologies to everyone for that. But we're here now, and we can talk. And we're talking, Joe, at the moment about buy-to-let landlords.
Yes.
And we're talking about, is this the time to get in? Because, there's now 2,709 products on the market, which is more than before the pandemic. So there's a lot of flexibility in the type of product. And, you can get a 5-year fix if you're a private individual for around 3%. So it looks like a good time to get involved.
Well, the interesting thing about that is I personally, there's never a right time to get involved. So now time is a good time to get involved, and the buy-to-let market is strong. But it should be taken a note that people like John Lewis and Lloyds Bank have decided to join the buy-to-let market themselves. So John Lewis, for example, recently announced that they have enough space in their own existing portfolio to make up to 7,000 homes. And they've decided that they will probably come into the market as landlords and offer rental space for potential tenants. Some of them are people that obviously already work for them themselves. And so in a funny sort of way, they are going to steal some of that space by building and actually providing that accommodation themselves. And this came off the back of the fact that they had to recently close some stores themselves because the retail industry went online over the last 18 months. And you can imagine when you've had high street names like Debenhams, which are part of our own life cycle, have all gone and have had stores. I mean, I can just envisage the Oxford Street store which was huge, and that then converted. It's a bit like the American Embassy converted into luxury apartments in Grosvenor Square. So there's a lot of that going on, and previously they would have probably sold it out to a developer and said to a developer, look, buy this and do this. What they've decided to do is now become the landlord, the developer themselves, because they realize that this is another way for them to continue to build their portfolio and have another income stream. So, but when an institute like John Lewis decides that they're going to join the ranks of being landlords, then there's no question in my mind that this is a great time for ordinary landlords to still be in there to invest and take the buy-to-let opportunities, and especially the buy-to-let finances that are available at the moment. And we've lost Bob.
Yes, I think he'll come back in a minute, hopefully. I think the obviously we've got the gremlins in the system this morning, but I think what's interesting about this is that investors are obviously shrewd people, and they're looking at the demand for rental property. Well, Property Mark have said that the private rented sector has got record-breaking numbers of people registering as prospective tenants at the moment. So investors are thinking to themselves, right, I've got very low rates, I've got more products on the market that might suit my needs, and I've got record demand for rented property. And all of those three is a sort of holy trinity that says, I think I can make some money.
Yes, again, because what is the alternative? And I've continued to say on our program week in, week out, if there was alternatives, people will probably not look at that. But buy-to-let property is the right investment return for most people. It was interesting yesterday at a wedding, and I was talking to a chap who just swears blindly by going into the stock market, and he says, I buy stocks and I don't touch property. But if I took the whole room, which is probably about 60 people, and actually broke it down, he was probably 0.01% of the persons that in that room would have said that he stuck to the stock market, but the rest of them would have all only believed and known the property, and that is the issue that we have. So yes, the products are there and the market is there, and I think that all of the the ducks are in a row for the people to actually say, well, this is the right way to invest, and that's going to continue. And once we've got all of the pandemic, obviously the Brexit things behind us, going forward, and when you see people like John Lewis and Lloyds Bank and the government sort of supporting this, I see this as a good thing for the buy-to-let market and for the growth for the young people. And if they could actually bring in some schemes that still gives them a foot on the run of the ladder and gives them an option like a share ownership type of thing, but without the housing association, I'm sure a lot of developers will actually take that on board too.
61% of landlords think that they're going to be happy as the year goes ahead with the sort of returns they're going to get from their investments in property. And I think what they're saying, Nottingham Building Society done some research into this, and they're saying it all comes down to the desire to earn a decent income. If you're going to really want the returns of many years ago, then those days are long gone, and it depends on whether you really think that there's enough profit in it for you, but there's going to be some, and probably more than having your money in a building society.
Well, the government has obviously they've got to earn their bit out of it, and there are more and more taxations and more complications and more hurdles are put in the way to try and make this a bit more streamlined. But it just doesn't take away the fact that the capital growth that people will ensure. So they may not actually have a income or a good return on their income, but long term they have a good capital growth if house prices continue to do. And in spite of the fact that we are now in July, and that sort of that rush for the stamp duty time is done. Historically, July, August becomes quite quiet anyway because kids break up from summer holidays and people's focuses tend to become more child orientated and holiday orientated. And I think after the 18 months we've had, everybody was looking for a break of some sort. So I think that will probably slow it down. Of course, the pundits, the media will use that point as to say that what's happened after the stamp duty, house prices have dropped. I don't think that is the case. I think that we're just going to get a little bit of a holiday and things will get back to some sort of normality come September. But I don't think that it's going to fall off the cliff edge as they've all been expecting to do.
Just heard from Bob. He's rebooting his computer. Apparently, it crashed. That's what lost him. So he's coming back in as we speak.
The good thing about this being live is that people know that it's just not made up. We do get out of bed on a Sunday morning to do this.
Yeah, very much.
And make sure that we bring Property Matters and give you all the up to date current information, despite the fact that I know you might quite like the idea of me not up to yapping away at 10 o'clock in the morning, but that's the price. That's the price you're gonna get.
You'll recall, of course, we had many graphs and charts last week, because actually last week was the Zoopla monthly report for June. And you'll be delighted to say there aren't anywhere near as many graphs. In fact, there's only, I think, one today for you. But Halifax have their turn to talk about June, and they're seeing that prices dipped for the first time since January. So the average house price now £260,358. It's a 0.5% drop on the previous month. Here's Bob. So the annual level of house price inflation is at 8.8%. So we're just talking to welcome you back, Bob, that the average house price report from Halifax this month saying that June dipped slightly, first time since January, 260 grand basically for a average house price now. It's 0.5% drop on the previous month, but still house inflation is at 8.8%. What's interesting, and I'm interested in your comments, is that what's happened to the detached property marketplace. We've heard a lot of stuff about the fact that necessarily this isn't being driven by first-time buyers, but people looking to move to semi-detached, people looking to move to detached, people looking for more space. And what's actually happened over the last 12 months with detached properties is that they've risen by 10%, almost £47,000 in cash terms. And now most of those properties are over £500,000, and they're 200,000 more expensive than semi-detached. That's quite a change in the market, Bob.
Absolutely, yeah. This was expected. 0.5% is probably, hardly a big drop, but I think it could be a sign of things to come as the market slows down, as we go into summer, as people take holidays, etc. I think that will manifest itself into further leveling off. And obviously, the stamp duty has ended, so the mad rush or the race for space has ended to a degree. Unless obviously you're buying below 250, then it doesn't matter. So half of UK is still under that magic figure. So stamp duty still carries on until the end of September for you guys over there in the Midlands and North. So I think it will definitely slow down, and I think it was expected.
And this is evidence, Joe, of home movers, so buyer's choice really driving the market.
Yes, I mean, the race for space, Paul, over the last 18 months has driven that desire to, and this has got nothing to do with first-time buyers or buy-to-let and so forth. This is purely the wish and the want of saying, well, now this has happened in my lifetime. My work ethics have changed. My job circumstances have changed. I've got the space to, I need the space to work from home, and I can travel a bit further apart, and therefore the detached market has become more and more popular. I mean, the ultimate aim in the social climbing system of the United Kingdom starts obviously with a studio or a bedsit type of operation, and works its ranking up to a detached, and it is purely a ranking process. And as you grow, you go from a terrace to an end of terrace to a semi-detached and ultimately detached. The detached ones are where it becomes quite variant, and that is because you can have a 3-bedroom small detached house, and then you can have a 10-bedroom mansion, which is still a detached house. It's just a case of who's won the lottery, I suppose, that week, and it depends on how they're going to get it. But the reality is that people want, ultimately, it is a personal achievement to say, well, I've actually now got myself a detached home. I've got no one attached next door. But modern properties are normally detached by about a meter. Because developers do maximize the space that they've got. They will build it to whatever they can. The detached property of the old traditional styles had more space, as did the semi-detached. and those ones were always allowed to be extended. So people bought those, so knowing that they could probably do some sort of extension, add a study, add another floor, add some more space to the loft. All those things were important. But right now, all the detached properties are maximized, to the end, where they've even already used your loft space and made probably the fourth or the fifth room up in the roof. And that is done and designed on the basis of continue to evolve people's buying, because once they outgrow a 3-bedroom detached house with a fourth one in the attic, they really now need to sort of, and the kids are growing up and they want more space, they want a bit more space, so they're going to go to maybe a 5-bedroom with a sixth one in the attic somewhere else in another development, or perhaps move out to the country where they can actually have more space and maybe some more land around it. So that's what's driven the detached market. It's about a personal goal in my mind, and almost a sense of achievement to say we kind of got there.
Because the one problem we've got, obviously, is the fact that, there's so little stock available for people. So there is a suggestion this week that people are actually holding off putting their properties on the market because they just can't find anywhere themselves. So they're in a maybe 3 and they're looking for a 4. So they're not putting their 3 on the market because they can't find a 4.
Mm.
Bob.
Yeah, and that sort of thing will keep prices sustained as long as there's a shortage. And demand exceeds supply, prices will hold up. So, yeah, I think there will be some of that as well, because unless you do find something that you can move into, you're not going to sell your own house, are you? So you're not going to go into rented. Although in a hot market, that was the smart move, not to be in a chain, sell your house. Mm.
And of course, the other thing is July the 19th is just a week away, just about. And, Freedom Day, the suggestion being that everyone's just going to exodus the country and the last thing on people's mind will be the property market.
Yeah, that will fall in line with the traditional time of the year, Paul, to be honest with you. Kids are breaking up from school. People are going to be focusing. And to be perfectly honest with you, there has been this massive rush. What they will forget is that the property market has been what's been holding the fabric of the country together to a large extent, in a time when everything else has been sort of falling by the wayside. And that focus of build, build, build and sell, sell, sell has kept a lot of the attached industries to the property market afloat. So people have had time at home. They've been doing a lot of DIY. They've been updating their properties and taking that time to sort of do what they can. So I think that summertime will probably only escalate that part of the business. So they will say, okay, well, I've got, I'm not going to move home, but I have arrived. So imagine, as we talk jokingly enough, that on the 30th of June, when they probably couldn't rent a van to move everybody, well, all those people have moved. They're now in, and they're going to spend the next month, 2 months during this summer break either getting their unpacking done and settling in and redecorating. So there is going to be another part of the market that is going to continue to do better for the housing market, albeit it may not be home moving, but it will be. But Bob's certainly right in saying that the time to remortgage and restock your situation in terms of what mortgage part of stuff you've got at the moment this is the time. And so therefore that he will have the time, on the basis that he's not going to spend as much time on the new buys and the people rushing to complete by the 30th of June. That time is done, even though up to 250 that's still available till September. But now is a good time for the other guys who are sort of sitting there and say, okay, well, I've got this mortgage, it's coming to an end in XYZ period. Should I be actually talking to somebody and saying, is this the time for me to remortgage? And that's absolutely the thing to do. That is the right time to remortgage, the right time to consider what other products are out there. And I know Bob's going to have plenty of time, unless, of course, he decides to, go to his Bahamas, Paris, or something. I don't, he might go away, but otherwise, Bob's around to do your remortgages.
Yeah, I think I'll move next door to you in the Bahamas, Joe.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Well, we can do it from online nowadays, Bob. You don't even
As
need to
long as
leave
we're
the show.
detached, as long as we're detached.
We are over a meter. Don't worry.
The reality of the situation is that surely the market does need a moment of correction, doesn't it? I mean, if you think about it, prices are going up 8.8% a year. That's higher than wages. So the properties are still further and further away. The carriage is moving further away from the donkey. Bob.
Yes, it's not easy. I mean, let's face it. If you're a first-time buyer or even somebody looking to move home, you know, before you know it, the prices are running away with themselves. So people who might have been chasing the stamp duty holiday probably found they paid more for their property because of the general price increases. So, whilst on one hand they might be thinking they've saved a lot of money on stamp duty, they really haven't because they've paid more for the property that they wanted to buy. So it was a bit of a false economy there. But yeah, I think a correction is no bad thing. Um, Unless you're an investor, of course, who bought recently, then you'll be a bit nervous. But you know, but the thing to remember is in any property cycle there will be ups and downs, and the key thing is to ride the storm. If there is a downturn, it will go up, and that's what history has shown us.
Well, we're talking about mortgages today, and we're delighted to have Bob Singh with us. We'd love your comments, of course, below the video that you're watching right now. And most of our topics today are very much around the financing of property because we want to make the most of Bob's knowledge, clearly. And a question that came up this week is about the kind of criteria that applicants are having to, or the hurdles they're having to jump to get their loans. Typically, we've had searches for things like furloughed workers. That's been a big concern, and how that's been dealt with. The market seems to be moving on. One of the big criterias that advisors are trying to struggle with, of course, is time in current employment. So what we're guessing from this is the fact that people maybe were furloughed, decided to leave their job, or were made redundant, and they've now found something else, and they've literally only been in post a month, 2 months, 3 months at the most, perhaps. And of course, lenders are going to be nervous about change. So how are you finding that situation, and are you experiencing something similar?
Yeah, I think we're in a fortunate position because we know lenders that will lend to you even if you haven't got a job. Now,
Wow.
what I mean by that is if you've got a job offer letter, if you're moving jobs, for example, and the job offer starts within 3 months, you don't need to have started that job, and they'll use your enhanced income if it's if you've got a bit of a pay rise. So lenders have different rules. Generally, yes, they want you to be in your job for 3 months. They will ask you whether you're in any probationary period, but they also look at time in continuous employment. So if you're in a job now, but you haven't been employed for the last 10 months, that's a worrying sign, and that'll really rule you out from some lenders. But this is why, good advice is always worth its weight in gold, because we can generally find a home irrespective of how long you've been in your job. So it's not a big downside. But it does limit your choice somewhat. If you have to go with what your current situation dictates. But there's always the home. So as long as it's a permanent job, and as long as you're safe in the knowledge that job will continue, because don't forget, you're taking on a very long-term commitment based on this income carrying on. So, you know, please don't take a mortgage if you think your job is unsafe, because that's the worst thing you can do. There's very little state assistance if you get made redundant. And what you don't want to do is go through the stress of buying a house and then end up losing it because your income is lost through loss of job or illness. But that's another topic for another day, how to protect your income. But your income is the bedrock of your home ownership cycle. If that's there and it's sustained and it's continuous, that's the best thing.
And brokers are saying that they're experiencing more and more customers, potential customers coming through the door with difficult financial circumstances. Are you seeing more and more people coming to you who are struggling financially?
Yes. I mean, it's not been a good year for many people. People were furloughed, receiving 80% of their income. And we know that in this country, people really don't have masses of savings to cope with any sort of a dip in their income. So when you're earning 20% less, and things get tight. So people then tend to neglect paying their credit cards on time or their phone bills on time, and the slightest of marks on your credit file stays there for 6 years. And some lenders pay a lot of attention to these little things, and you could be refused the mortgage even if you've missed one late gas bill or something like that, or a late credit card payment, because that sort of sends alarm bells ringing to the lenders, thinking, hang on, this guy can't pay a £50 bill. How's he going to pay our £1,000 mortgage? So, we are seeing a lot of it, but, don't lose heart. There are some lenders who are a bit more sympathetic than others. The rates can be higher. That's the thing to note. The more adverse credit you have, the more higher rate of interest you'll pay. But lenders are human. They are sympathetic. They do have to treat you fairly according to FCA rules. So if you've had some blips, but they're now historic, and by historic I mean more than 12 months old or 24 months, then they're more likely to lend to you than if they're quite recent ones.
Great
On
stuff.
that
Thank you.
note,
Joe, go on.
yeah, on that note, Bob, when you look at the criteria and so forth, when people ask me, I always say to them that they should really tap into their Experian or the Equifax thing before they actually visit, or we present that out. Is that something that you would encourage before they actually come to see you, so that you can
Yeah,
actually understand their story before they actually get there?
absolutely. We insist on a check my file search, which has results from three bureau, TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. So sometimes you've got a blip in one file but not the other. So brokers can be a bit cute and go to lenders that may not search that particular one.
Right.
Uh, so it's always good to do your credit check. And sometimes people swear blind they've got nothing wrong with them, and lo and behold, when we do the search, there's a CCJ of a unpaid parking ticket. Because we have to present the right situation or the right position on application, so we have to do a credit file and make sure we declare all the credit cards, all the loans, all the HPs, all the CCJs or defaults, because otherwise the lender thinks we're not doing our job properly, and then we can lose our license. So
And
you know
do you find that when people don't do that, I mean, they sound astonished that something as small as a bill
yeah,
that has
yeah,
created such a problem for them? And
absolutely.
do you find that lenders take advantage of that sometimes, and maybe it's the innocence of someone? I mean, I've done this for many years, and I still find people that are completely flabbergasted when they come to you and say, and I ask the question, have you got any county court judgments, any adverse credit, anything? No, 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 pay it. And actually, they've got a kid of theirs whose probably phone bill is actually in their name, but the kid's
Yes.
supposed to be paying, the monthly payment. It almost tells you that you've got to take charge of everything yourself, because if you're relying on somebody else who's going to do it, and they'll say, but I forgot to pay it, and actually it becomes an adverse, and they ignore it because it's got nothing to do with them, and the next thing you know, they've got as you say, a CCJ or an adverse credit report on their file, which could damage the whole thing for the entire family to a large extent. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the safest way to prevent any of this happening is to pay everything by direct debit. If you've got a large credit card bill or a balance, just pay the minimum amount by direct debit, because that will still keep you ticking over. They won't show as late payment or a missed payment if you keep on making the minimum payment. And the thing that people don't realize about county court judgments is, even within 30 days of judgment, if you pay the thing off, it will not show on your file. So whilst you might have got a parking ticket, CCJ, or whatever, as long as you clear the thing within 30 days, it will not appear on your file. If you leave it 32 days, yes, then it stays there for 6 years.
Wow.
yeah,
Well, who didn't know
very
So,
that? So
important.
that's grand advice. Thank you very much for that,
Yeah,
Bob.
mm,
yeah.
Perish the thought that we get
yeah,
into that position in the first place, but yes, absolutely. That's very
yeah,
interesting to
Well,
know.
some people, Paul, they get into that situation not primarily because of their own doing, because they have
mm,
done it, like you just said, for their kids or
Mm.
another member of the family, because it was just easy to do, and but they don't then make the payment. But the point I'm trying to make is that no matter what and who it is, you yourself must take charge or don't do it, because ultimately you're still going to be the one that's going to pay for it, even though you think you're doing somebody a favor. If it comes on the adverse on the credit files, and then to
Yeah.
make matters worse with that credit file, the lenders, that's
Hmm.
their window of opportunity to charge you more money, because as far as they're concerned, that's the rate for that particular job, even though you think, well, it's only 50 quid. But like Bob said, their view is, and if you put yourself in a lender's position, that if they think, well, if they can't pay 50 quid, how are they going to pay 1,000 quid? So, they take a different view on that. And so it is very, very important to make sure that that credit file, I try and encourage literally everyone to register on one of these sites and make sure they keep a tab on what's going
Yeah.
on with their life, because that is the driving factor of it. And
Yeah.
it's quite
Because,
scary how silly little things actually drops it down to 750 points from a 900 point, and they think, well, why is that? And it's you can never work that one out, but they do these things, and that's what every judgment is made. Some of those are only because, for example, recently I can just tell you, I was taking out car insurance for my daughter, even though I was going to pay it. They took all the searches on my name, and I found there was like five car insurance companies. I actually only gave it to one person to give me a quote, but 5 companies actually did a search. Now, the problem is those 5 companies, obviously, I assume that the broker has gone to them and each one has done their own search under that sort of one unilateral authority. But that then goes against me, because if somebody thinks, well, hang on a minute, this bloke can't get insurance because there's 5 people trying to do an insurance policy. And it's got, all I did is went to one person and said, can you sort an insurance out? And 5 people have done it.
if you go to a comparison site, you get about 50 searches.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But that they should actually explain that to some extent, and that actually goes against your points, because
It
if
can affect
someone
you.
thinks that there's loads of people doing a search on you, then everybody else starts to judge that by saying, oh, this guy is obviously not getting a joy here, so maybe he's not as good a credit as you want him to be. So I'm just saying that I'm sharing my own experiences, and I did that for my daughter, thinking, okay,
No,
let me. And the next
no,
thing I know, I've got all
no.
these people chasing me, and
I do think lenders are taking advantage of people who have these minor blips, because let's not forget, this is how the specialist lending market came into being, because high street lenders wouldn't go anywhere near anyone with a credit default or a CCJ. So a secondary market emerged from the specialist lenders, typically American, and the whole new industry was born, because instead of charging, for example, the current rates of 1 or 2%, these guys charge 4 and 5%. So they
yeah,
had
they're doubling
huge
the money.
margins to make. They're making far higher margins than the high street banks for taking on a risk, which I think is a perceived risk, because in anyone's income expenditure list, the mortgage is priority. That will always get paid first. It doesn't mean if you've got parking ticket for 20 quid, you're going to miss your mortgage payment. So I think it is abuse, if I can call it that.
It
I think that
is.
abuse
Yeah.
I think they're abusing their power, because anybody taking on a mortgage is likely to pay that first before anything else.
From looking at the past to looking at the future, let's talk about the green future. The new green buy-to-let products, Bob. Landlords purchasing
Yes.
properties with an EPC rating of A, B, or C as part of a wider effort to encourage more people to improve their efficiency rating. There's 2 new products from companies called Paragon and Foundation Home Loans. So basically, if they can upgrade their properties to an A, B, or C, then Foundation's product, for example, pricing starts at 1.99 for properties with an energy efficient rating of A, which is a discount of 3.1% for 2 years. For products with an efficiency rating of B, current rate is 2.229 and a discount of 2.8% there, and then a C, currently 2.49 with a discount of 2.6. So they're not to be sneezed at, and they're suggesting that this is one of the ways that the government and the whole property market can actually move itself forward to meet these emissions targets that the government has set on property for 2050.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is not uncommon now, because Paragon and Foundation are 2 specialist lenders, so they can give big discounts because obviously they make more in the first place, whereas the high street lenders aren't as generous because they're giving discounts of around 0.3%. So it's a good move. I think it's one way to entice people to maybe make their homes more efficient. Not only will they save money on mortgages, they'll save money on their energy bills. So it's a good move. And I think I think another two or three lenders came on stream this week. So I think give it a month or so, most lenders will have green products, including buy to let.
Do you think, though, that, I mean, obviously, if you're going to improve the energy efficiency of your home, there's probably going to be a significant capital outlay to do that in the first instance. And do you really think that that pays back over the period of the mortgage?
I think somebody did some calculations and they're saying not quite because obviously you're going to have to fork out a lot of money for new double glazing, and you may not get your return back immediately, but it could enhance the value of your house definitely, and it'll lower your tenants' bills or your own bills going long term. So it's a long term investment. It's I suppose the government can't force you to be energy efficient, and this is one of the ways it's probably enticing us at the moment is to these discounts are mainly for purchases right now. Not many, I think, lenders have come on the remortgage scene that I know of, but it's mainly for purchases. So if you're buying a property that's energy efficient, you're likely to get a good rate, and it'll soon come into the remortgage world as well. So if you've bought something that wasn't perhaps an A to C rating, you've done a lot of work to it, and it's now a B or C, you can maybe go back to the lender and say, look, where's my discount? Can I remortgage? But most mortgages will be either locked in for 2 or 5 years, and if you change them around, there'll be penalties. So again, I think you need some advice around that if and when you want to claim for that EPC discount.
Seems to be working because, Joe, the number of homes that are A to C in the last 10 years has risen, or it's tripled, in fact, from 13% to 38%.
Yeah, I think the whole green policy, when you look at from motor cars to homes, is becoming quite an important thing. I'll be perfectly honest with you. When EPCs came into play, I just thought it was another stealth tax that the government were actually interested in, and I can't imagine, and I can't remember, to be perfectly honest with you, how many people ever looked at the EPC recording or the whether it mattered, whether it was A, B, or C. I remember the home buyers pack. People spend thousands of pounds putting those together. I had loads of files, and I never had one person that ever walked into my office and said to me, "Oh, can I have a look at the home buyers pack because I want to know what the EPC score was." It was just complete rubbish. But it's now coming to a point where people are beginning to probably take heed of that and thinking to themselves, well, actually, if it's actually going to affect my bottom line, then it's worth me considering making sure that this does meet the criteria, and I can actually tell my mortgage broker that I'm buying a property and it's got EPC rating of XYZ, and that may help them reduce the interest that they're going to pay on the lending, and maybe go to a lender that is actually probably more green policy friendly. So it is
Yeah.
coming into focus with that, and I'm sure Bob will either help me with that or say that's
No,
wrong.
I think as a society, Joe, I think we're all becoming very energy conscious. We're buying electric cars more and more. We're ditching diesel. I think as that awareness increases, and obviously the younger generations are much more into being green than we are. So I think as we progress or move into the next decade, I think things will change. Right now, just to go back to EPCs, if you have an F-rated property, you can't get a mortgage on it.
Really?
Yeah, F is a fail. So you have to actually improve the property before you buy it, which is why F-rated properties go to auction. So, and sometimes it doesn't take a lot of work to change it from an F to an E. And I've seen cases where a cylinder jacket has done the job, £25. So do read it because people tend not to read EPCs, that they don't really understand them. So, but you can actually just spend a very little amount of money and change it from an F to an E. And if the government then raise the bar a bit and saying, look, anything that's an E can't get mortgage, that'll maybe spur on a lot more people to actually, make their homes a bit more energy efficient to make sure they are compliant, and that they can sell them because your buyer will need a mortgage on it.
So what sort of things are the difference between, say, an E and an F then? What's the difference typically between a fail and a pass?
What in terms of items?
What sort of
Yeah, I
things
mean,
make a home an F as opposed to an E?
I think well, the case I've just cited was just
Yeah,
the lack of a cylinder jacket on a hot water tank.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it could
something
be.
quite trivial
Mm,
sometimes, and it's also half of these things are a matter of opinion. To sometimes you get an EPC
mm,
inspector who is going to be absolutely rigid about what he's going to do, and another one is probably not going to be as rigid and take a view on it. But the bottom line is what is recorded, and when it's recorded with that, it will now going forward. I suppose it makes a huge difference on the amount. And actually, when it starts to hurt the pocket, people get a little bit more serious about it. And I
mm,
think that's probably where the government and the lenders are coming in with the green mortgages and saying, well, if you've got your EPCs and you've taken care of it and you've got some, good things, then we'll reward you by giving you a lower interest rate.
yeah,
So they want to encourage it.
yeah,
It's like everybody wants to buy electric cars. From a long distance point of view, I can't get that in my head at the moment because I just can't
mm,
spare 2 hours of charging somewhere. But the reality is that locally, immediately, yes, I think local traffic-wise, electric cars seem to have a win. But long
mm,
distance, they haven't got that right. But it's the same as EPCs. As Bob says, if they get to fail, and it might only take a jacket around a cylinder to actually drop it to E, but that could be the difference between it going selling and not selling.
mm.
But,
Abs-
I look
No,
forward to those times
absolutely.
because then I can sell them in auction.
Mm. I think the government could do more, to be honest with you, because they could make it more tax advantageous to have an A to C property,
Yeah.
or lower the capital gains tax bill, or give you more interest allowance on it. So, you know, government could do a bit more, but I think they're not keen to put too much into the mix so soon. I think they just want to see how it goes and then maybe take any action on taxes later.
Got a story for you now, gentlemen, where Bob, you'll know about this. You were actually quoted in the article as having a view on this story. So basically, it goes back to the 19th of July, which of course is next Monday, a week tomorrow. And the restrictions are listed. Everyone's going to be rushing out the country to amber countries to go and have a
Mm,
holiday, a much needed holiday. And there is a worry that not only will there not be enough customers coming through the door, but there won't be enough staff in the mortgage companies to deal with the demand. You're saying this is going to be a game of two halves, according to the article, Bob. It says for brokers, which was a very great topical analogy to make. I congratulate you on that. Those with cases of 250,000 and below, and those with cases priced higher than 250,000. It'll be a game of two halves. What did you mean?
What I meant by that is, yeah, I think north of the country and the Midlands will still carry on seeing a significant level of activity, whereas maybe in the south, where property prices are higher, we'll see a bit of a slowdown. So yes, who doesn't want a holiday after being cooped up for the last 15 months? I think people will and deserve to take a break, and let's hope more countries enter the amber or the green categories. But banks have learnt some lessons, I think, during the pandemic. They've adjusted to home working because these big office blocks are no longer fully occupied. All the underwriters and admin staff work from home, so they've adapted, and I think that adaptation will pay dividends now when we face maybe something similar again. So I don't think there'll be too much disruption. I think it will be affected, obviously, but I think lenders will be far more better prepared, as will solicitors, because we've had one bottleneck, haven't we, at the end of June, and now we've got another one in another 80 days or so at the end of September. So I think time will tell, but I think we will get through it as we have done.
I think there's another point here as well, of course, because that's going to make a natural correction to the market. As Joe was saying earlier, it's the natural time of the year when the market quietens as other people's priorities change. But we've also got two other factors to think in this, Joe, haven't we? Which is that we have got the potential for rising inflation here. And of course, unemployment is still an iffy one because the furlough scheme's coming to an end. So we really don't know what's happening with jobs. And we're looking to see rates starting to rise, as we were talking about earlier. So there are two other headwinds coming towards us.
Yeah, I think Paul. I mean, when you look back at just the last 18 months, let alone the last 40 years that I can share with you, I think we know that it is the case of the volatility of what the country is going through, and what people's personal circumstances are doing. But one thing is for sure, one thing that underlines all of that time is that property is still by far the safest form of investment, and by far the greatest investment and desire to own. I mean, you just can't take that away, irrespective of how high or how low or how much incentive anybody's going to give. It's a personal wish and want. I mean, I sat around a dinner table and asked, the 10 people or the 5 people around the table, five of them out of them, or 4 out of 5 of them, will want to be involved in property, want to invest in property, want to buy property. If it's not for them, it's for their children. So I think those things are the things that we are fortunate with in the UK, because we are limited in space. The demand is high, and the supply is limited. But irrespective of inflation, irrespective of the rates, people will find somehow that they want to ultimately own their own home, and that is one of the greatest things about the UK.
Indeed. Final story today, gentlemen, and I was fascinated to know your thoughts on this. So, there's a new housing development going on up in South Hill in St Helier in Jersey. 150 new homes. It's a very prestigious development. One MP on the island, Sam Mezek, wants to prevent investors from buying on that estate. So he's looking to support first-time buyers, adding the development's potential to offer affordable housing should not be wasted. And he's lodged a proposition with the States Assembly, the Parliament of Jersey, to say, look, we're not having any buy-to-let investors buying on this estate. What an interesting thought. Furthermore, to add to that, he's looking to have a 10% deposit instalment plan in place to really help those first-time investors first-time buyers rather, to get into that estate of prestigious homes in a prestigious area. So an interesting point, government intervention potentially on controlling buy-to-let. Isn't that what we need here in England as well?
Well, the size of Jersey is like a fingernail against the United Kingdom, and of course, the rules in Jersey are very, very different altogether. First of all, those properties that are going to be up for new builds probably will find their own owners within the island. I'm sure families or children of the people that are already living there would rush to buy that, because they do like to keep a control on who ends up in Jersey, and how they get there and what they can do. So the chances are very slim for the you and I's of the world to probably rush in there and say, I'll buy it, or get one of our kids to go and buy it. Well, it would be great if you can do it, because Jersey is very it has a lot of tax benefits, and is a lovely place to go. If you haven't been, it's a fantastic place to go, and it's all at the bottom of our country. But they have very stringent rules there, and that kind of scheme would be very welcome, I think, in the United Kingdom. But because of the supply and demand factor here, I'm not sure that developers will want to actually, put out of their pocket or support a scheme that's going to give people a payment plan on deposits and so forth. When you look back at the help to buy schemes that we've been running here so far, developers and the government coming in, they've been taken up, but developers don't really want to lock their money in. So 10% of their profit, or 10% of their return, gets locked into a property for a longer period. So it doesn't make it that easy. But I think the scheme in Jersey is really cut and made for Jersey, and it's a good news item, but I can't see it happening in the UK. What are your thoughts, Bob?
No, it's difficult, particularly from a mortgage perspective as well, because as you say, developers can't afford to leave margins in there. And the only way this can work is a developer assisted deposit. So they're lending to the person, so the banks would have to be in bed with the whole schemes. but the buyer then has no skin in the game. They if they don't put a deposit down and it's all gifted or given by the developer, what incentive have they got to stay there if things go pear-shaped? And the prices of these one-bed apartments aren't going to be London prices. They're going to be far higher because this place here is in a very expensive place for real estate. So I'd like to see what sort of first-time buyers they're talking about.
Interesting point. But on the basis of government or political intervention, do you think that that's something the buy-to-let market, irrespective of the area, do you think that's something that the government should control? Because surely so many people, as Joe's talked about many times, in retirement age, looking to take out some money from a pension, buying themselves, becoming a sort of amateur buy-to-let investor, and they're dealing with the leaky taps and all the rest of it, or they're putting it out to an agency to deal with. A managing agent, surely that's what's preventing first-time buyers from getting on the ladder, because there's so many people with the instant cash to buy outright, and they're beating the first-time buyers. So shouldn't there be some government control?
I think there already is. I mean, the lack of interest rate relief, etc., etc., has put off a lot of buyers into the buy-to-let sector, especially high-rate taxpayers. And a lot of high-rate taxpayers aren't making any penny on their income now because it's all virtually taxable at 40%. So the government has tried to disincentivize buy-to-let landlords and succeeding to a degree as well. But I think if you read the report, I think Wales was trying to stop the holiday letting market happening over there because they feel that's not what they want to happen in Wales, because that might fuel prices and discourage first-time buyers because of affordability issues. I think lenders are doing their best to keep pace with the requirements of the borrowing public. And, for example, one lender will lend 5.5 times income to first-time buyers if they have a salary of 30,000 or more, which is unheard of because most first-time buyer lending is done at 4.5 times income. So, lenders are adapting, but prices are rising and rising and rising, and it's no surprise that people are now preferring to buy far from London and not really too fussed about it because people can work from home. So location is no longer a driver as to where you live. It's now all down to what can you afford, and where do you want to live.
Indeed. Well, talking of London, never one to miss the opportunity for a little bit of PR. Purple Bricks have managed to find the location of where Raheem Sterling was brought up, and has managed to get some boards outside the properties along the road saying it's coming home. And bearing in mind it's the Sunday of the big game, 55 years of hurt potentially could come to an end, or potentially another 55 years, who knows. But I just thought it'd be rather fun to say it's definitely coming home, certainly according to Purple Bricks. So well done them for a cheap bit of publicity.
We should have said it's coming homes. Yeah.
Coming homes.
Yeah, exactly. They've slightly missed the wording there, Bobby. I think you're right there. But no, I think they've taken the opportunity and utilised it. There's a lot of people going with that, but as you say, Paul, let's hope it's coming home. And anyway, we're sending you there to go and collect it. So can you make sure you bring it back? Otherwise, you won't be on this program next week.
What's the prediction, guys? What's the prediction?
Oh goodness.
Well, I have to say it's probably going to be 3-1 to United Kingdom, to England. You've got to go for it bigger. You can't say 2-1 because the Italians are good. So you just got to have that extra gap to make sure that they just don't make that a little bit more. But I think he's coming home. I can see someone's posted it in there.
I'm going to say 3-2.
So I'm going to go for 3-1 for England. It's our country. We must support them. And I think the weather is good out there. And bring it home. And Paul, can you please make sure you get a picture when you got it there? Because I want to make sure that we put that up. Paul, by the way, has been lucky to go to the game. He's going to be amongst there, and I'm just wondering what he's going to look like, but we might not spot him.
I'll take a picture and put it on the Property Matters Facebook page later. For my side of it, I think it's going to be a very, very tight game because these players play each other in the European Championships. Champions League, etc. I think it's going to be 0-0 or 1-1 to penalties, I'm afraid. And I think
Bob?
I said
I'm not.
3-2.
Yeah, he said 3-2, but just someone's agreeing with me there. Penalties with us winning. Well, it's about time we won a penalty shootout, and I suppose that's probably the way. But I just have a feeling that I'm going to have to sit there for 120 minutes and eat me nails.
Yeah,
It's great to be going. Don't get me wrong, but I actually think, my goodness, can I actually take the stress?
You can
And on that
it.
bombshell,
On that
we
bombshell.
we know that we'll have the result this time when we speak next week. So, Bob, thank you so much as always for your wisdom and your insight into the mortgage market. It was great to be able to discuss. There's been so many stories on mortgages just recently. We thought it was just right that we get you back on again. Apologies to everybody
Pleasure.
for
Thank
the
you.
technical issues that we had at the beginning. I hope they didn't stop your enjoyment of the show. We'll be back with a slightly smoother version of Property Matters, hopefully next week at 10 o'clock. Thanks for watching.